Summary of The History Boys by Alan Bennett. The History Boys is about two teachers and a group of students at an all-boys high school in England in the 1980s. All of the boys want to go to Oxford or Cambridge. At the start of the play, Hector, a well-liked teacher in his 60s, is in charge of his general studies class. He tells the boys how happy he is with how they did on their tests and that now that they are over, they can get back to their real schooling. Hector tells the boys that they shouldn't worry so much about getting into Oxford or Cambridge because there's a whole world outside of these universities. The headmaster of the school wants the boys to go to well-known colleges so that the school will be better known. He hires Erwin, a young Oxford graduate, to teach history and give the kids more polish. During a funny scene in Hector's class, the boys meet Erwin. The headmaster walks in while they are making up a skit about a brothel in French. Hector is using this to teach the subjunctive verb tense. Hector asks if anyone needs a ride on his motorbike after this show. We soon find out that Hector gropes the boys as they follow him home from school. They talk about it in a matter-of-fact way. Erwin tells the boys in his classes to take unusual points of view in their writings, even if they don't really believe them. He says that this will make them better candidates for college. Erwin starts to understand that Hector's classes have taught the boys a lot about literature, but they don't want to use it on a test. He wants to know more and more about what happens in Hector's classes, especially after he finds out that Hector teaches behind a locked door. We see more of Hector's general studies classes, where he tells the boys that books will help them feel better when they are sad or hurt in the future. Erwin tells Mrs. Lintott, who is also a history teacher, that one of the boys, this Posner, recently came to see him. We already knew that Posner likes Dakin, another student, but that Dakin is sleeping with Fiona, the secretary of the headmaster. Erwin finds out from Posner that he thinks he might be gay. Scripps, another student, says in a side story that Posner goes to Erwin because he thinks they both like Dakin and he wanted company. Soon after, Erwin asks Hector to tell the boys to use what they know about general studies on the test. Hector says that not all information is supposed to be useful. Erwin says that schooling is important now, not just for the boys' future security. Near the end of Act 1, the headmaster calls Hector into his office. He tells him that he knows Hector was touching on the bike. He asks Hector to step down when his time is over. Hector reads a few lines of poems and then tells the headmaster, the transfer of knowledge is an erotic act in and of itself. The headmaster stops him by saying that his behavior isn't normal. He says that Hector and Erwin will share their classes for the rest of the semester. Posner and Hector talk about a song about a young man who died in war in the last scene of the act. They both seem to have something to do with the poem, which is about being different. Dakin walks in wearing a helmet and ready to go home with Hector, but Hector pushes him away and rides away alone. Act 2 starts a few years from now. Erwin now works as a TV expert. We find out later that it was Posner who came to see him on set. He asks Erwin about his friendship with Dakin, and it seems like he is writing an article about it. Erwin gets mad, so Posner goes away. The story goes back in time to Hector's classroom from many years ago. The boys are joking around, and Hector feels so sad that he can't keep up. He puts his head on his desk and says that he thinks his life has been a waste. The other boys don't know what to do, and only Posner goes to comfort Hector. The headmaster tells Mrs. Lintott about Hector's touching and says that he's almost glad it happened. He has always wanted to fire Hector because it is hard to measure what Hector has done. He leaves, and Mrs. Lintott tells Erwin that the headmaster is a twat. In the first lesson Hector and Erwin take together, they talk about the Holocaust. Hector and Posner say that trying to make a good point about the Holocaust on a test is disrespectful to the people who went through it. Dakin and Erwin say that the Holocaust can also be talked about as a historical event. A few scenes later, Mrs. Lintott, Hector, and Erwin give the boys fake interviews for getting into college. Mrs. Lintott gives a speech about how women have been left out of history while men have made all the important moves. After that, Dakin asks Erwin what it was like for him to go to Oxford. The two of them start to flirt with each other. The boys then tell us in short stories about their tests and trips to colleges. All of them got into Oxford or Cambridge, even Rudge, whose father used to work as a cleaner at one of the universities. Erwin is then confronted by Dakin. While he was at Oxford, he found out that Erwin had lied about going there to study. Erwin says he knows this is true. Dakin woos him and gets him to agree to go out for a drink. He makes fun of Erwin for being wild in class but careful in real life. Dakin tells Scripps that the headmaster often makes moves on Fiona, and that he has used this knowledge to get Hector off the hook. He says that for old time's sake, he is going to ride home with Hector today. But when the headmaster sees Dakin wearing a helmet, he says that this is not allowed. He tells Hector to take Erwin instead. In a side note, Scripps tells us that the motorbike crashed that day on the way home. No one knows for sure what happened, but it hurt Erwin badly and killed Hector. The boys get together and talk about what they remember of Hector. Then Mrs. Lintott tells us about how they lived. Most of the boys are successful in some way, but Timms gets into drugs and Posner lives alone, but he always remembers what Hector taught him. The play ends when Hector says that pass the parcel was the lesson he really wanted to teach the boys. Sometimes that's all you can do. Take it, feel it, and pass it on.
About the author. Alan Bennett was born in England in the city of Leeds. He went to Oxford University and got his first degree in Middle Ages history. When he was in his mid-20s, he co-wrote and acted in a comic review called Beyond the Fringe. This was the start of his work in theater. Bennett has worked in stage, TV, and radio since then. He has also worked as an actress, a director, and a writer. The plays The Madness of George III and The History Boys are what most people know him for. Bennett and his boyfriend, Rupert Thomas, live in Britain.
Hope we summarized it fully and you liked it. Please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel so that we are motivated to create more videos.